So the goal with the repeating crossbow is to design a new addition to the Raptor series in the form of a full-sized repeating crossbow. So the basic idea is you'll have a foregrip here, and then you'll have a pistol grip back here, which is also going to be a pump action reload. Ding! So with the previous model, the Raptor Mini crossbow pistol, this was actually constrained by Canadian laws. You see, I'm not allowed to design a full-sized crossbow pistol, so I had to make it a miniature version. And so I designed proprietary darts to go with it that are much smaller than crossbow bolts. So this is a crossbow bolt. This is basically the smallest size that a crossbow bolt comes in before it's no longer considered a bolt. And this is a Raptor dart. It also has a tiny grip handle. I was kind of getting worried that this part was looking a little too serious. Now this is the Grip Tech Grip by Grip Tech, featuring its proprietary patent-pending Grip Tech technology. I don't hate this grip. It turned out pretty okay. I like the overall shape, but this little bump here needs to move down. This back end needs to come out a bit, and this trigger guard needs to be more thin. More like this, because it's super weird feeling to have a thick trigger guard. Now this hideous thing is like the bare bones prototype of the internal mechanisms. And the unfortunate thing is this file actually became corrupted. I think most people would rage quit at that point, but I saw it for what it was. Not a learning experience, but clearly just a message from God, telling me that I could be designing it a little better. Like this line of sight here. It's like, look how high it is. Like this is where the bolt comes out down here. Like if you're going through the trouble of making a bottom-fed magazine, the least you could do is have a better line of sight. So there's a lot of flaws with this prototype, which is to be expected. Like these draw assists here, they're way too tight, basically jammed. And so I was in the process of changing like 5 different parts. And it was at that point that the file became corrupted. So this thing's only partially working, but I'll do my best to demonstrate. This system in theory is going to use a printed sled serving. I'm not a fan of traditional servings because they wear out, they're not rigid enough, they're too thick, and you basically have to be like a level 100 basket weaver to actually tie one. Knots are actually terrible. Like look how fat that is. That's so much extra scale that we have to factor into our design now. We have to make our pulleys taller. We have to have our draw lines further apart. It's not good. Well, I came up with like this port tether system where you just like spinge the end of the rope until it forms like this big goober, which you can then use to like press fit into these little port locks. On the cams, we have a port vine, so if the drawstring stretches out over time, you can just reset it to the next port. And for the cables, we have tuning ports. Funny thing about the tuning pegs is they work great. They make a ton of sense, and no one adds them. Like, it's not a thing in the world of crossbow tech for some reason. String instruments have had tuning pegs since 2,000 years ago. Crossbow has the same needs as a string instrument. It needs to be in tune, needs to be maintained regularly. It's also used in life or death situations. Imagine a musician tuning his guitar by like pulling off the string loops and adding twists to the string and then hooking them back on. Like, nah. So having a printed serving will complete my attack against traditionalism in modern crossbow engineering. It makes more sense to have a rigid body latching with other rigid bodies and to have cables simply pull the serving. Because with string you have like these claws that come down and they yank everything down and sometimes cause misfires and all sorts of shenanigans. So the sled is super thin to stay lightweight, and it's strong enough to withstand like pulling forces, but to prevent like warping or torsion or bending, it's very tightly constrained in the chamber. See, these slots are much more thin than usual. So normally the serving would get cocked by the draw assists, but like I said, they're super jammed right now. I'm actually using them as like sling mounts. Now this thing doesn't have a trigger right now. I was planning on putting it, but you know, some bullshit happened. So I'm just gonna release this manually. Normally the draw assist would bring the serving all the way back. It would latch, and then when you put the draw assist back, it would load the next bolt. So I'll try to unjam them to show that. Now it doesn't click in because the draw assists aren't the right size, but that's an easy fix. Underneath, there's like this little coupler. You can barely see it, but it's this thing right here that moves back and forth with the draw assist. So upon putting the draw assist back, I can only do one side at a time right now, so I'll show you. See? If you want to know how the bolt loads, it's basically this mechanism here, which I've also remodeled. I made the thread gate shorter, and the worm screws now have bearing on the very tops and bottoms, so they're much more stable. Versus these, which have a fair bit of wobble. These are like the old worm gear assemblies. This is the tuning mechanism I was working on. I already explained like how it works on the previous model. It's just a little more compact. It's got a pretty small worm screw, so I reinforced it with a nut and bolt. And this thing holds up to at least 50 pounds, maybe more. And just to show you how small it is. Yeah. And instead of having a screw that you need a tool for, I just have this dial. And speaking of worm drives, how about this puppy? Huh? Look at that. This is an adjustable limb mount that sits inside of the riser system. Right here. So remove this. Oh my god, it's tight. So yeah, that's a limb mount. And it's adjustable. Basically, I have this lever that I use to weight test this. It can support at least 40 pounds, maybe more. I didn't bother to test more because 40 pounds is basically the maximum draw weight rating for these arrows. So 40 pounds per side, it's 80 pounds draw weight. Basically, your limb will have this shape. It'll stick on like so, and then get bolted down from the top. And then you'll be able to adjust the angle of the limbs, which will basically allow you to disengage them to make stringing more easy. It'll allow you to just simply add more draw weight at the turn of the dial. I think it's going to be a good idea. And this is like the housing cushion. It's basically just two pieces like this mirrored, and it has these little threaded ends on them, which get nuts, and that closes the house together really well. I've been using this joinery all over this design. And this design's larger than the print bed. I just have 220mm printers. This is considerably bigger, and it's very rigid. Like, this type of joinery is probably the best possible joinery you can make for 3D printing, where you have panels, holes, and you have little screw nubs sticking out everywhere, and you make screws and you make nuts, and you just nut and bolt everything together. It's like a very reliable way to freestyle prototype a thing you don't know how to make yet. Without this kind of joinery, I probably wouldn't have I was very stumped on how to run mechanisms past the limb mounts. Like, am I gonna have all this stuff? So yeah, doing connections this way made it a lot more possible to design a mechanism like this, where you have, you know, magazine, runway, and it comes back, and then there's a latching mechanism. There's like a whole separate box just for the latching mechanism, and the grip is gonna butt into that and activate the latch at some point. Might as well just take it apart to give you a better look at the fasteners. These are dovetail nuts. They're awesome and they suck. They suck because they hurt your fingers. They're awesome because the way they're shaped, you can slide dovetail joints over them. I think my screwdriver's too big. Wow, looks like someone didn't want black olives on their pizza. So what did they do? They just threw them on the fucking ground.